You ready for the word? You know, I believe that there's power in questions. There's a power in questions. And I believe that many times God teaches us through a series of questions that he asks us. And if you believe that there's power in a question, you'd also have to believe that there's even more power in the answer. Especially when Jesus asks us a question. If we have the power and the passion and the courage and the faith to answer that question, boy, there's power in that. And I love questions. When I meet with people, I ask them questions all the time to just try to, figure out what they want to do or how I can help them. But, we answer probably hundreds of questions all day long. And many of you this morning have already probably asked yourself, or somebody else has asked you this question: what do you want to do, right? You woke up and maybe your spouse said, hey, what do you want to do today? What do you want to do for breakfast? What do you want to do for dinner? What do you want to do for lunch? What do you want to do after church? What do you want to do this week? What are we going to do next weekend? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? Right? And we get asked that question so many times that it loses its significance. Which is fine, because most of those questions that I just asked really don't have any level of significance. But in another way, it does. I try to live my life, right? I'm not the most, intelligent guy. I don't have the largest IQ. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So I try to break things down simple. Simple things that I can understand, I can do, I can achieve. And I've always been like this. I think the key to my life is two things. And I think this does translate for most people. The key to my life is two things. Number one is knowing what I want. Knowing what I want. Knowing who I am, who I'm called to be, who I'm created to be. Knowing what I want. Or if you want to put a spiritual connotation to that, knowing what God has called me to do. That's number one. If I can figure out number one, there's only one other thing left, and that's number two. And number two is everything that I do with my life backs up, supports number one. Yeah. It's as simple as that. If I can figure out what I want to do with my life, if I can figure out what God has called me to do, then the rest of my life, I should only do things that back that up. You could say it in another way, we all have strengths and weaknesses, right? Everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses. We have to stick with our strengths. Not so much so that what I believe in is I need to do what God has called me to do in the midst of it. What I need to do is what my strengths are. My weaknesses, as long as they're not something immoral or causing me to sin, my weaknesses, somebody else has been called to do those things that I have a deficiency or a weakness to. I need to stick to my strengths. I need to know what I want to do. Mark Twain said it like this: I can teach anybody what they want out of life. The problem is that I can't find anyone to tell me what they want. We have to know what we want. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, I do know what I want. And in certain areas of your life, we do know what we want. Trust me, as I've been studying this and praying on this message, I figured out, there's certain areas in my life that I know what I want, and there's certain areas in my life that I don't really know what I want. And many of us think, I know what I want. But sometimes we don't. Because think of it this way. Many times we live life where we're kind of complaining, we're kind of grumbling, we're kind of all stressed out in just this, it seems like a cloud of chaos and confusion just somehow kind of fouls us. We're just wallowing in this kind of sense of mediocrity. And all those things, mindsets or attributes, I believe they boil down to one thing if we're living a life like that. It's because at the root of that, we don't know what we want. We don't really know what God has called us to do. And then what happens is our life, it's not really our life that we're living. We're just living somebody else's life. We're just being blown around in the wind. It's like a leaf that falls off a tree and it just blows every which way. We seemingly seem like we're out of control and life is just happening to us. We have to come to the point with our life, especially as Christians, that we have to get to understand that we are in charge of our life. It's up to us. We are in charge of our life. Now, on the flip side of that, make sure you listen to me closely. We are not in control of our life. There's a difference. God is always in control. God always knows what's best for us. He always has a plan. No matter what's going on in the world, no matter what's going on in your life, God is always in control. But at the same time, you are in charge of your life. We have to walk it out. Amen? Amen. Proverbs 6, verse 9. Chapter 16, verse 9. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. A man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. We have to know where we're going. We have to know how we're going to get there. We have to know what we're called to do. In a sense, we have to reverse engineer our life. What I mean by that is we have to have a dream and a vision and know what God has called us to do maybe 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now. And we know what that is. It's a dream. It's a vision. And we need to reverse engineer our life, walk out our life so those things happen. You know, if you look, one of the example I'll use today is my family. Most people that know me, my family is of utmost importance to me. So in that situation, I have a pretty good idea, I think, of what I want for my family. How I want my family to run. Not today, but in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. When I'm not even here and my kids are leading their kids and leading their families. I have a picture for that. God's given me a picture for that. Now it's up to me to reverse engineer how I'm going to get there. Excellent. What are the things that I'm going to do today for my family and with my family so that I can see what God has called me to do come to pass? Maybe not even when I'm alive. Maybe well after I'm gone. Leave a legacy for my kids. But there's things we have to do now to walk out that calling in our lives, no matter what it is. You know, we have all this, if you're going to call it school intelligence or book intelligence or head intelligence. That needs to be transferred to sort of emotional intelligence where, when chaos is going on and it's just, you're in a crazy situation. Okay, God, what am I going to do right now? When everything doesn't line up perfect, when all my ducks aren't in a row, what am I going to do? I have to have some emotional intelligence to be able to walk that out. I have to have self-awareness of what's going around me, self-awareness of who I am, what God's called me to do, where I'm going to be, self-awareness of how does God speak to me. I mean, if you look at my life, as much as I respect Pastor Rick, and as much as I look at Pastor Rick and what God's done through him, or how God speaks through Pastor Rick, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference in my life. I have to understand how God speaks to me, how God works through me, how God works inside of me. The same with you. I can look at Pastor Rick or Pastor Donna for direction, or motivation, inspiration a little bit on that. But man, I have to know what God has called me to do. I need to know where I'm going, where he wants me to be. Yeah. Proverbs 21, verse 5, the plans of the diligent lead surely to plenty, but those of everyone who is hasty surely to poverty. I have to know where I'm going. An example of, this iPhone, this smartphone we have, right? This is one of the most powerful, efficient tools I could possibly have. I can basically do anything, go anywhere, call anybody, find anybody. All I need is I could be stranded on a desert island with nothing but this phone, and I can figure out where I want to go if I know where I'm going. Right? This is a powerful tool. It can be good for, it's really powerful in both ways. I can use this as a positive, or I can use it as a negative. I can. This isn't my message, but I'm going to go down this line. Right? This is really, I don't even know how to say this. This could be not only one of the most positive things in my life, use it as good, but it can also be the most destructive things. Not even in anything that, just think I can, like my family has phones or whatever they are, iPad, right? I've seen families all the time. They don't even talk to each other because they're looking at this, right? Even when you talk to simple things like this. People's lives are passing them by. People's callings are passing them by because they're focused on this phone. They're focused on this phone. We were at a park the other night, last weekend, at a picnic, and I saw this like normal grown man, like he kind of looked like me. I mean, I guess that's normal. He looked like normal, and he was like walking around the park, but like not on a track, and he was just like over by the bushes one time, and then one time, little Mike, I think it said, "Dad, you see that guy over there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I see him. I've been kind of watching him because a little goofy." He's like, "Oh, he's breaking his egg, or no, hatching his eggs. He's over there hatching eggs or something." Well, it's his Pokemon game, right? It's a grown man, probably while his family's at home, having dinner, and he's out catching these Pokemon people or whatever. I don't know. Snap. Does that work? No. But no, so back to my message, right? So I have an app on here called MapQuest, or I've got maps or whatever, right? Back to the island. I'm stranded on an island. I don't know anybody, right? But I have this phone. I have this great tool. I can get to anywhere in California, New Mexico, New Zealand, Australia. I can just punch it in there, and it's going to get me there. That's all I need to know. The problem is, what I need to know is I need to know where I want to go. I need to know what I want. If I don't know where I'm going to go, I'm never going to get there. So this powerful tool that I have in my hand is basically rendered useless if I don't know where I'm going to go. This Bible, this powerful tool that I have in my hand, if I just read it, if I just meditate on it, even if I just preach it to you people today and I never walk it out, as far as my life goes, it's basically rendered useless. I have to know what I want. If I just read it and even just spew it out to you and never walk it out, my Christian life is nothing but a bunch of theory. Well, in order to live a life that God has called us to live and achieve the things God has called us to achieve, our life has to be about application, not about theory. There's a big difference in those two things. Amen? So here's the question. That's not my question, but it's Jesus' question that I believe is a question that if we answer it for ourselves, it can radically change your life. And I believe it's a question for every single person in this sanctuary today. And it's the story of Jesus healing two blind men in the book of Matthew. So Matthew chapter 20, verse 29 reads, "Now as they went out of Jericho, a great multitude followed him." So just picture the scene, if you will. Jesus is walking down the streets in Jericho, and a great multitude of people are following him. All kinds of people, because they know who he is. They've had an encounter with him. They've had an experience with him. They've been touched by him, or at least they've heard stories of this man that is radically changing lives all over Jericho. "And behold, two blind men sitting by the road, when they heard that Jesus was passing by, cried out, saying, 'Have mercy on us, O Lord, Son of David.' Then the multitude warned them that they should be quiet. But they cried out all the same, saying, 'Have mercy on us, O Lord, Son of David.'" So you have two blind men sitting on the side of the road, crying out for Jesus. And what does the multitude do? What does the spiritual people probably do? The people that are having an encounter with Jesus, what are they saying to these guys? Sit down. Just sit down. You're not worthy. You don't measure up. We're following this guy. Just sit down. Stay there in all your affliction, all your worry, your stress, your blindness. Verse 32. So as the blind men are screaming out for Jesus, pick it up in verse 32. "So Jesus stood still and called them and said," so Jesus is walking down the streets of Jericho. He hears their cry. He stops, he turns and looks at the two blind men, and he says, and here's the question I believe Jesus is asking each one of us this morning. He says, "What do you want me to do for you?" Jesus is saying, "What do you want me to do for you?" And I know what you're thinking. Half you're thinking, okay, that's great. And the other half are thinking, wait a minute. I was always taught by my teacher that there are no stupid questions. This sounds like a really stupid question. And here's why. Put yourself in that position, right? This is Jesus Christ, the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, all powerful, all sovereign, all knowing. He can do anything. And I'm a blind guy on the side of the street. He knows I'm blind. He knows I can't see. He knows what my problem is. He not only knows what my issue is, he has the power to heal me. And I call out to him, and knowing I'm blind, he looks at me and says, "What can I do for you?" Kind of a stupid question, right? Now, if that was me, and I encountered Jesus, and I was blind, and my faith was at all-time high because I had heard of Jesus' healings and setting people free, and I walk up to him, and he knows I'm blind, and I call out to him, and then he turns to me and says, "What can I do for you?" You know what I'd probably say? "Oh, sorry, wrong guy. You looked like," well, you didn't look like the guy because I can't see, I'm blind. But I've heard about this guy healing people, the all-powerful. The guy I know wouldn't be asking me the question. And then we stop there, and what we thought was a God encounter, we had mustered up all this faith. We take a couple steps back because, wait a minute, this guy's not God. Because we don't want to work for it, so to speak. We don't want to have community with Christ. We don't want to be in community. We just want him to reach down and touch us. We say, "Jesus, just speak to me. Just show me. Just tell me." I don't want to do any of the work. But we have to realize that Jesus many times, and there's story after story in the Bible, and you've heard firsthand testimonies of real living people, Jesus always works in unconventional, unpredictable ways. So why does Jesus ask the two blind men the question? Here's why, in my opinion. I believe that one of the non-negotiables of life is you have to know what you want. You have to know what you want. This works in any area of your life. It's even more amplified when you're a Christian. When you have God, Jesus, inside of you, you have to know what you want. And many times, even if we realize that, many times what we do is we ask God for something less than what he wants to provide. We have a financial issue and we say, "Oh God, I've got this financial crisis. If you can just mitigate it for a little while, or send me in the mail some, credit card applications where I can, open up another credit card and take care of it. Or Lord, my marriage is on the rocks, and it's, my marriage on a scale of 1 to 10 is probably a 5, but everybody else I know is a 4. So it's okay. I guess I'll deal with it. And I'm in this job that I'm getting underpaid and overwhelmed, and it's kind of a dead-end job. It's not what I want to do. If you could just kind of maybe give me a new boss, or a longer lunch period, or shorten up my hours, or let me work at home someday. And we ask for something less, but somehow we think that's more noble, or that's the Christian thing to do. Instead of answering Jesus' questions with the desires of our heart, as it says in Proverbs, where we say, "You know what, I am in that financial position, but you know what, I'm a Christian, I'm a tither, I'm a giver, and you know what, I'm going to double down on those tithing scriptures." That's what to do. My marriage that doesn't seem like it has much hope, you know what, I'm going to invest in it. And Lord, I want you to speak and pour into my marriage, where my marriage is a 10 out of 10, and that everybody else, that my married couples, they see that, and they see you working through me and through us, and I'm an example to other married couples. And that job that I have right now, Lord, I just pray that you use that job for my future and my calling, that you give me knowledge and teach me things in that job that I know it's for a future calling, whatever that is to be. Amen? We need to know what we want. It's up to us to know what we want. These two blind men in the story, the power was in the question, but the real power came in the answer because they knew what they wanted. Let's pick up the story again. 32, so Jesus stood still, called to them, and said, "What do you want me to do?" Verse 33, they said to him, "Lord, that our eyes may be opened." Lord, that our eyes may be opened. They knew what they wanted. It sounds a little silly, but just think about your own life sometimes. Sometimes God is there for you. You know he's there. He's asking questions. You need to lean on him. And sometimes you don't really ask him for what you want. You ask him for something secondary. And we just go through the motions of life, and we say we're doing things, and we act like we're doing things, and we're believing in things, but we say all this over here, but our doing is way over here. And we have this big gap in between what we're saying and even what we're believing and actually what we're stepping out in faith and doing. And we need to get to the point where we need to understand what God's called us to do and called us to be. And we need to marriage that stuff of what we're saying and what we're doing with our lives are as one and the same as possible.
Yeah. Very good.
And what happens is, if we don't do that, we're actually pursuing nothing. We're trying to reach some made-up level of success. We're pursuing all these worldly achievements, and we're so busy, and really we're even so passionate. It's all good attributes in a way, and we're chasing it so hard and so fast and so long. But here's the problem: we don't even know what we're chasing. We don't know what chasing it actually is, and we end up living lives of just chance happenings versus lives of purpose. We just live lives of a bunch of random things, random coincidences, and it's not really what God has called us to do. And when those random chance acts happen to work in our favor, and we got 2 or 3 small things going on, right? Your job got a little bit better. You got a new boss. He's nicer. You got a larger lunch break, and you're thinking, oh man, God's really in my life. It's not what my Bible says. We need to know what we want. We need to have the courage, really the courage to walk out what we want when there's a world out there that really is designed to stop us in our tracks. He's going to ask Pastor Rick's comments today. Hey, what are you going to do if the person becomes, the person is elected president that you don't want? You know what you're going to do? I'll tell you what right now what you're going to do. You're going to live out your life the way God's called you to live. There are things in your life, there are very few things in your life, at least in my opinion. Hey, this is the way I live my life. I'm sorry if it doesn't, anyway. There are very few things in my life that are big deals, right? It's just a handful of them. All this other stuff is just other stuff. Even things that are crazy in our world, whether it's a political election or whatever, it's just other stuff to me. I don't know if that's the right way to think about it, but that's the way I think about it, because it's not what I want to do. It can't stop me from what God has called me to do. It can't stop me to where I'm acting, living my world, my life out of fear and not faith. I can only choose one of them. If you take faith and fear, they're polar opposites. I can't do both at the same time. If I'm living a life of faith, that means I am not living a life of fear. If I'm living a life of fear, guess what? I am not living a life of faith. You can't have it both ways. It just doesn't work. It's one or the other. It's either God or the world. Which one you want to choose? I look back at, the example of my family, right? And life is a marathon, not a sprint, right? The world likes flashy. The world likes quick. The world likes a sprinter because you can see it. You can see, you can see the results right away. I don't want to fry bacon. I want to cook it in the microwave back there or whatever. I need everything instantaneously. And we'll watch the Olympics this week, and we'll watch world-class sprinters. We'll figure out who the fastest man in the world is and the fastest woman in the world is. And they'll be great, and they'll be crowned. But guess what? Life doesn't work like that. Life isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. Those people that are they're world-class athletes. They train in a certain way. They live in a certain way. They eat a certain way. They even think a certain way. They have a mindset that's a certain way. Guess what those same people would do if they ran a marathon? Nothing. They can't run a marathon. They're trained sprinters. They don't train for a marathon. Our lives are marathons, not sprints. If your life isn't perfect today, don't worry about it. It's not going to be perfect tomorrow either. But it's a marathon. What are you going to do today so that I can get to the end? With my family, how am I going to build that up today? Because I'm telling you right now, I use my family as an example because I'm talking about what do I want to do? What am I called to do? I will tell you, one of the primary callings in my life is to be a dad to those kids and a husband to my wife. I don't care who I'm preaching to. I don't care how big the audience is. That's really not my number one calling. One of my number one callings is my family and to pour into them. You know, I was running a couple weeks ago with little Mike, and when he came home, he was just being funny, and he was telling Mom, and I think the other kids were there, he's like, I think Dad's been running more because we're getting ready to go to the beach. And I'm thinking, no, that wasn't the case, but I probably should have thought of that about 9 months ago, not a week before we go to the beach. But my answer, and this was true, my answer was, buddy, I'm not running to get ready for a beach. I'm not even running to get ready for the 5K. I'm running because when I'm 45, 55, 65, 75 years old, it's going to be me out there in the backyard showing your kids how to shoot a free throw or swing a golf club or hit a curveball. It's going to be me. I'm invested in this for the long run. This isn't a sprint. This is a marathon. You have to know what you want, and you have to know what Jesus can do for you. You know, I'll give you, sorry, I'm like way off my notes anyway, so I'm going to give you another example. So, which just came to my head, which is dangerous. But anyway, so, I coach my kids in a lot of sports, but I coach them in basketball. And I coach Mike and Jack both in basketball, and this is not why I'm using an example, but we're actually really good. Like Mike's team hasn't lost a game in 2 years, and Jack's team didn't lose a game at all last year. But I'm always preaching to these kids, especially the older ones. I'm always preaching to them. I mean, they don't take it as preaching, but there's actually very little basketball talked in a way. It's all about I'm trying to develop the mindset of these kids. And I can do this because they're actually pretty good. So when I talk to them, I'm always about what do you want to do? Because they're very good. So as long as they perform to the way God has called them to perform, has blessed them with athletic ability, we're going to win the game. That's just the way it is, right? And we live our lives like that. We live our lives like, oh, I could do this, yeah, but. I could do that, yeah, but. I could get a new job, yeah, but. I could help this person out, yeah, but. We always have an excuse. And the kids are the same, right? They're always like, yeah, but the other team's taller. Yeah, but. No. And every time they have a question, I'm always like, it doesn't matter. When I'm coaching these kids, I very rarely, if ever, talk about the other team. I always talk about our team. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And it's interesting, even in 8th grade basketball, when you're like 2-0 and 3-0 and 4-0, it's crazy. Everybody gets stressed out. The kids are stressed out. The parents are stressed out. Hey, you think we're going to win next week? What? This is 8th grade basketball. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to win just like the next guy does. Don't. Yeah. But every time they're always like, when we're in practice, hey, coach, that team is going to be pretty big next week. Doesn't matter. We talk about the same things every practice. It doesn't matter. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And it's really not even about basketball. It's about life. What are you going to do? And I even tell these guys, okay, they're 8th graders, and I speak over their heads. They probably understand about 50% of what I tell them, but I always tell them, you may not understand what I'm talking about now, but when you're studying for that exam in college, when you're 30 and you got 2 kids at home and you had a rough day at work, when you're 50 and whatever happened, I'm telling you, you're going to understand. That's what Mike was talking about. You got to know what you want to do. And I would instill in this kids all the time. And there was one game during the season, we were maybe, I don't know, was at the end of the game, it was a real hard game, and we had like one timeout left with like maybe a minute and a half. And I called them over, and we were kind of struggling a little bit because like the gym was going crazy, the referee wasn't very good, the fans were shouting, and I brought them over and I said, hey guys, the same stuff all year long. What are you going to do? And I said, you have a minute and a half left. I don't know. I said, I'm totally proud of you. You guys have played your butts off. I don't know whether they're going to win the game or not. And I don't know, and I don't really care. And if we lose the game, we could lose the game on our physical ability. We could lose the game because the other team was better. We could lose the game because the referee made a bad call. I don't care. But I will tell you now, you have a minute and a half left. You 6 guys are going to go over there and you're going to figure it out amongst yourself. But I will tell you, you will not lose the game in your head. Yeah. You guys figure out what you want to do and go do it. And my assistant coach looked at me and said, "You think that's going to work?" And I said, "I don't have any idea." But even at that age, the stuff I'm talking about, I believe, transcends age. I don't care if you're in 8th grade in here today. I don't care if you're 80 years old. It transcends. You always have to know what you want. And biblical principles are biblical principles. I don't care if you're in a church, in a gym, at a schoolyard, at your job. It just doesn't matter. We need to continue to dream big. As adults, as we get older, we've stopped dreaming. We've stopped having vision. Man, I want to have the dream of a child, right? You ask a child what they want to do. I want to be a rock star. I want to be an actor. I'm going to be a baseball player. Then I'm going to be a fireman and then a doctor. You're going to be busy, right? But that's great. They're dreamers. Some of us in here, we need to start dreaming again, right? We need to have the dream of a kid, but the faith of a man. Because the faith of the man is proven, it's resilient, it's tested. It's been in situations where you say, you know what, I was down and out. I didn't know what was going to do, and God showed up. Man, I was losing, and somehow my situation went from losing to supernaturally winning. That's the faith that we need to have. And I get it, this doesn't always pan out this way, right? There's stories in the Bible, like we just talked about, numerous, and you can read them where Jesus healed blind men, but there were still blind people. There was countless stories of him healing lepers, but there's still leper colonies. Why is that? Why does God heal some people and not others? I have no idea. Here's the way I chalk it up. It's one of the great mysteries of life. I could easily stand up here as a pastor, as a preacher, as a believer in faith and say, you know what, those people were healed because they had a greater level of faith than the next guy, or they had a different type of faith than the next guy. And maybe that's true. I'm not sure. But I would say for the most part, I can't really say that, because saying that or believing that diminishes the power of God. And it even diminishes the power of his people to live like that. We still have to understand that God's working in us. God's working through us, and it's all part of our story. Whatever our story is, it's just a different path. You're just on a different chapter. And you might say, well, I'm in the middle or the end of my book, and so of the book of my life, the story of my life, and it's like a horror film, or it's a sci-fi thriller, and I don't like that. I want a love story. Well, change it. Yeah. It's your life. One of the greatest things of my life is that in the fact it's my life. I make the decisions. The greatest thing about your life, whether you want to realize it or think of it this way or not, the greatest thing about your life, it's your life. As I said before, you're in charge. You're not in control. God's in control, but you're in charge. One of the ways you take charge is you give him control. But we are in charge of our life. We have to know what we want. You know, I heard a guy say it this way one time. Life is a little bit like eating at a Chinese buffet. And I love Chinese food, so, you know. I tried Filipino food one time, but it was like, the menu was like dog, cat, squirrel. So, Anna's not even here. Where'd she go? She missed it. And my wife's half Filipino. That's why I can get away with it. But anyway, the guy said there's 2 ways to eat at a Chinese buffet. You grab your plate and you go through and you grab one of everything, and you keep loading up the plate and you grab one of everything. Or you don't take a plate and you walk through the Chinese buffet, see what you want, and then you take out what you want. Does everybody understand the first two? I don't know if anybody's like me. I'm the first guy, right? I'm the guy that loads up my plate. I eat it. I load up another plate. I eat it. I load up another plate. And then Chris, you'll say, oh, what are you eating there? And you're like, you know what? Not sure what that is, really. I don't really know. Well, did you like it? you know what? I don't really know if I like it or not. I'm not sure. I'm kind of like too full. I'm having trouble breathing right now. So I don't really know. But my point is, I don't know where I come up with this. My point is, we live our lives sometimes like that, right? We consume and take in everything, whether it's good, bad, whether it's a big thing, little thing, and we take it in. And we get to a point in our lives and we're like, holy cow, how did I get here? And then you're like, oh, is this what I want to do? I don't know. I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff going on. Well, is this what God's called you to do? I don't know. I'm not really sure what God's called me to do because I'm too busy doing all this stuff. I'm busy, so I won, right? I'm doing good. Like I'm busy. I don't even have time to play with my family or do with my kids, and I can't even get on Facebook or send a tweet or go on Instagram or catch Pokemon. I can't do any of that stuff. I'm busy doing a whole bunch of nothing. But the blind men, they knew how to respond. You can come up, Jake. The blind men, they knew how to respond. We can't let that moment pass us by. Last scripture, Philippians 4, verse 6. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known to God. Let your request be known to God. That's good for today. That's good for tomorrow. That's good for 30 years from now. It's not like you're at the deli counter picking a number and you get one shot. It's always open, 24 hours a day. But we have to answer the question. We have to come to the point where we answer the question. We have the faith to answer the question. God's questions that he asks us, they not only demand answers, but they demand actions. They demand decisions, not debating and talking to them about it. If God's called you to do something and it lines up with the word, here's what I would tell you as a pastor: do it. You don't need to call Pastor Josh and see what he thinks. You don't need to join a community group and throw it out there on week 4 when you're comfortable and you think people like you. You don't need to call the prayer partners. Do it. Do it. Be filled with faith. Be bold. Answer the question that God's asking you. The blind men knew the importance of that moment. But Jesus never goes back to that area again. What if they would have missed their moment? What if they missed their moment? Here's a question I have for you, and even for me. Is it possible that it's not God holding my life back? Is it possible that it's not God holding your life back? What if it's us? For my life, what if it's me holding my life back? Because I'm not answering that question that Jesus is asking me, where he's asking, what can I do for you? He's up there looking down at me, Mike Lemp, on this Sunday afternoon, and he's saying, my child, what can I do for you? When Jesus asks you that question, don't answer with a subpar answer. Don't answer on the basis of just what you can do. Because we answer the question many times on what we think we can achieve, what I can pull off my human body. Answer the question that he asked. He asked, what can he do for you? That's a different mindset. That's the question we need to answer.